All right, good evening. Welcome to Iron Coder. This is our second time we're meeting up. And today we're going to be talking about the results of our Fizz Buzz challenge that we started last week, as well as starting off a new challenge for the upcoming week. So first off, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Fizz Buzz challenge. Obviously, Fizz Buzz is a substitution game or a challenge where you go ahead and replace the numbers that are divisible by 3 with Fizz and the numbers divisible by 5 with Buzz. And if they're divisible by both, then Fizz and Buzz. And I was really happy to see that we had great participation in the Fizz Buzz challenge. We had not only about 8 or 9 people that participated, but even greater number of languages that were represented, with people doing multiple languages in some cases. So we'll be getting into that in a couple of minutes, but first I wanted to give our participants a chance to talk about maybe what they thought of the challenge or what they've been up to for the past week. So, hey, Victor, thanks for joining. And
thanks for having me.
No problem. Glad you were here. So, does anyone have anything they wanted to bring up or talk about? Maybe what you've been doing for the past week, or interests, anything related to coding? I know that, Derek, you ventured into Clojure for one of your solutions. How did that go?
I did. It was certainly interesting. I had never dealt with a Lisp-like language before, and I happened across a couple of articles where they talked about how successful you can be using Lisp and how it's sort of a different mindset and give you more powerful abstractions than a lot of other languages. Mm-hmm. So I decided to give it a try. And Fizz Buzz, the actual meat of doing Fizz Buzz is simple enough that it allows you to sort of try your legs in another language and see how that goes for you. So I actually did it in a number of different languages where I tried to draw out the features of each language so that I could show what I knew and what was sort of interesting and neat about each language and made it different.
Okay, awesome. Hey, Kiasha, welcome.
Hi, everyone.
We're just starting off going through talking about what we've been up to for the past week or so, and then we're going to get into Fizz Buzz before we start talking about our next challenge.
Oh, nice. How do you find my notebook?
So myself, apart from, we kind of did as a group the Python and Ruby versions on air last week. I added a version in Java, I believe, to mine because that wasn't a language that was represented. So I put that one in there. Which other languages did you do, Derek? I know you did Clojure and Perl.
Python, because that's really the language that I'm working on at the moment. Perl and C, because those are the languages I already knew. Clojure, because I wanted to give that one a try. And then along with the C, I was able to, because of a discussion with Jonathan, I put the assembly that was generated by my compiler in as well, off of the C code.
Cool. That's really great. And I think we had some other languages represented. Kiasha, I believe you did it in PHP?
I did. Mine was exactly in PHP.
Great. And Victor, did you do the Ruby?
I did, yes. Huh?
So there should be, let's see, what's the best way to do this? I could throw up some screencaps of the different languages, and we could talk about them, or we can just kind of maybe just discuss it briefly. Do you have any preferences on that? Not necessarily.
Why don't you throw up the screencasts?
All right, sounds good. I will go ahead and share that out. Just one second.
Jamal, are you still there?
I think he froze. We lost Jamal.
Seems like it.
Oh, there he is. Now we have him twice. So we can see him on this one, but we can't hear him the other one. Wow.
Jamal, I don't know if you can hear us, but we can't hear you.
And there's two of you, which is hilarious.
And he's gone again. Still can't hear you, Jamal. Nope. Are you using your new Linux machine? I think you messed up your drivers.
He looks like he's getting mad.
I think I would be getting frustrated in his situation too.
Oh, I would have been frustrated 5 minutes ago. This is why friends don't let friends Linux.
Ooh.
I'm joking, of course. Joking.
What do you run?
Mac.
I'm on Windows, which might actually be worse than Linux.
Oh my god. People still use that?
Yeah.
You're good. You're good to go. Just when that finishes, bring it back to me.
Okay.
Bye.
Oh, that's what it is.
The funny thing about it, we heard him a few seconds ago or a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Just get a whiteboard and just draw us pictures.
Actually, as far as operating systems go, I go back and forth between Windows and Linux, and that gets really confusing because the commands
That's brutal.
aren't interchangeable, so I keep trying to use the wrong one.
Yeah, that's brutal. That's living like an animal. That's hard.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
So we'll close down this other laptop and use this one. All right. Well, that was fun.
We're going to remove all that in post-processing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we do. We have editors and a whole bunch of people that support us that are able to do that kind of thing. Go start the screen share, and hopefully it doesn't all just go away this time. There we go. All right. All right, so Kiyasu, I don't want to put you on the spot, but did you want to maybe talk through just briefly your PHP-based solution?
Sure.
Go ahead and bring it up.
Alrighty.
Oh, we got PHP too? Cool.
Yep.
So here was mine. This was a PHP solution that I built, I think, somewhere in the middle of while I was in my coding bootcamp. So hopefully it's pretty straightforward. At least I can still read it, so that's at least a positive thing. So pretty much just using the for loop that you saw there on the screen a little while ago, and setting that variable, initializing it to 1, and having that counter keep going all the way up to 100, and using modulus, whether it was divisible by, evenly by 3, do something, by 5, do something. If it was divisible by 3 and 5, that's how I was outputting Fizz Buzz.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically the last else, of course, caught, the final exception where it was not divisible by 3, 5, neither, and that was just to echo out whatever I was at that moment in time.
Yeah, that's great. I like it. It's very compact. You're able to express a whole lot really quickly, and I think languages like PHP and Perl, which is what it's written in, what PHP is kind of based on, and languages like that let you really express a lot without typing a whole bunch.
Right.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Derek, did you want to go through one of yours?
I can go through one of mine.
Sure. Any particular language you want to look at?
I don't care. What do you want to see?
You
know what? Why don't we do the Perl, because it's similar to PHP, and we just looked at PHP.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, so I started off at the top with a little bit of a nicety to make my life easier, and Perl has a lot of system variables that they're there and you can use them, but you need to know they're there. So that $\/ is for print statements, and I set that equal to a new line character so that I didn't have to put a new line at the end of all my print statements.
Okay.
Then I do a for loop going from 1 to 100, and I'm using another special variable there. I haven't told it what the index of the for loop is, so it uses $_ as the default variable for that.
Interesting.
And then I compare the modulo. I start off by comparing, doing modulo 15, which is the same as it being equal to 0 modulo 3 and 0 modulo 5. Print out Fizz Buzz. Then I check 3 and 5, and end it off with the number, and notice that the print statement doesn't have anything that we're passing in, and the print statement knows at that point that because there's no argument, it's going to print out that $_ again. So there's a lot of sort of implicit assumptions made in there, which is both the benefit when you're writing Perl and the nuisance when you're reading someone's Perl, because you don't necessarily know or remember all of the special characters that are in there.
Yeah, that's interesting how, like you said, with this $underscore, you don't assign any variable here. You just kind of know that there's this sort of magic reference out there that you can just use, and then here just calling print all by itself will not only get that, but it also adds in this trailing new line, and it just does it for you. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think a good counterpoint to those would probably be probably Java would be a good counterpoint to that. Which Java obviously works very well, and people use it a lot, but they also talk about it being verbose. So here's the Java solution. Notice my little disclaimer here at the beginning. It may not be the best way to do it in Java, but I wanted to put something together to kind of show that. So everything in Java is a class, so you kind of wrap all of your code in class, and you need an entry point into Java, which you might hear people talking about the public static void main string args, which is, not to get too deep into it, basically this is where Java knows to start executing your Java program. So then all of it's just in a single method from there, and I think this probably is somewhat similar to the other solutions we've seen, where you set up a loop, and in this case, I set up a Boolean variable so that if either Fizz or Buzz was true, it would set it to true, so that it knew that it was Fizz Buzz, and then it prints out Fizz Buzz, and or the number. But it is not as compact, I think, as either the Perl or the PHP-based solution. Right, let me look real quick. I wrote up a blog post on this that should be hopefully published out on Code Newbie soon. Let me see the list of. I put a list of the different languages that we used. There. Here we go. Whoa. Are there any of these other languages that anyone wants to take a look at before we move forward? All right, cool. Well, I just want to say thanks very much to everyone who submitted a solution and took the time to participate in this. I was really overwhelmed not only with the number of solutions that were presented, but just the wide variety of solutions and ways of solving this. So thank you very much. Let me turn my screen share off. Okay, awesome. All right, so that concludes the Fizz challenge single week to go ahead and get started. This next challenge is going to be a 2-week challenge. I think we're going to try doing 2-week challenges from here on out. And this next week we will be working with something I called it word madness, but essentially it's Mad Libs. So you're going to have a sort of story, and you're going to be free to go ahead and write that story yourself and present the user with a series of words, or maybe some kind of wizard that would prompt for words, and then insert those words into the story and display it out to the user in the end. And here, let me shoot out a link to a document that kind of describes it for the folks that are here. That's actually the discourse version. Let me get the actual Google Doc. So I wanted to talk briefly about how we might maybe one way to solve it, not necessarily using code, but just in pseudocode, just kind of step through the logic of how we might approach this, and then go from there. Just as soon as I get this link. And I'll try to do it without my computer crashing this time. screen share so folks can see this too. All right, so here it is. And one of the things I wanted to do with this is give some stretch goals. So just the basic challenge is to go ahead and get input from a user and insert that input into your story and then present the story out. In the end, it's something that does provide a variety of options as far as design goes. But if you wanted to go a little further and consider how your code might need to change to accommodate these various stretch goals, I think that would be an interesting exercise. So go through the stretch goals here real quick. So rather than just inserting words into the output at the end, do something to highlight the words that were inserted so it differentiates them from the other words, whether that's putting them in a different font or making them bold or underlining them or a different color. It's really up to you, but just making the words look different. And I think these are, at least in my mind, getting increasingly difficult as we go along. But yeah, maybe not. The second one is to have your solution present more than one story to choose from. So you might approach your design a little differently if you had, say, 2 stories or 3 stories to try to move the common elements together so that your code that might be duplicated is in a single place. Maybe create some functions or methods or objects, who knows. But you may want to try and do multiple stories. Third stretch goal, create basically a file format, and that can be however you want to make it, so that it's kind of like almost a story player. If you wanted to add as many stories as you like, you could, and then have your solution read that file and play the story by prompting the various words and then outputting the story. That would kind of allow for infinite Mad Libs, just as many as you wanted. And then finally, this one, I don't even know how exactly to approach it, but if you wanted to kind of just really run with it, you could make it so that it will not only play the game, but it will make the Mad Lib. So input just text into it, and it will do it'll replace some of the words with blanks that then need to be prompted out to the user. I think that would, at least in my mind, that would be the most difficult of the challenges to do or stretch goals to do. But don't by any means feel like you have to do one of the stretch goals. If you are if you're wanting to just do the basic Mad Libs, that is an excellent challenge. But I wanted to give it a little bit more to folks, because I think in my mind that one of the challenges of coding is that you end up having to not only design your code initially, but then changing your code. So maybe if you have a product that you take to a client and you show them the initial version, you might then get some feedback that you need to go ahead and make some sort of change to it. And that's kind of what I wanted to simulate with the stretch goals, is that so you've come up with a solution, you make it, and you present it out, and then maybe there's an additional requirement that gets added in or thrown in there, and it can make you have to adjust your code and make it a little bit more or a little different, and that can cause some interesting challenges, I guess is a good word for that. So let's talk a little bit about how we might pseudocode that together. I'll go ahead and bring up a browser or a file here. Any ideas on how you might assemble a program to do Mad Libs? And I'm not really sure either. I haven't really thought about it, but we can brainstorm here real quick. one thing I did think of is that it is obviously going to be somewhat language dependent. What should I say this? We'll say PSENGO. So like if you're doing JavaScript, you're probably going to utilize your web browser to be able to collect that input. Whereas if you're doing, say, Perl, or Ruby, or Python, you might be looking at a terminal window to collect the input. So I would think that maybe if you are doing this, you're first going to, at a high level, need to collect the words from the user, right? And then at some point later on, we're going to need to add the collected words to the story. And then maybe a few steps later, we need to display the merged story out.
Jamal, do you realize you're not sharing your screen with us?
No, I did not. That probably would be a good thing to do.
It's a helpful discussion no matter what. It just seemed like you were trying to
I was
show
typing.
us what you were typing.
Thanks for letting me know. I'm just, I'm planning on getting all of the errors out in this tonight's show, so, I won't have to do it in the future. All right, so do we think we can maybe break these down a little bit further as to what steps we might need to take in pseudocode to accomplish this goal?
Words. Maybe collect the words, some kind of prompt or something. Because I know we're gonna have to, probably depending on again what language you use, but like in JavaScript, use like the prompt command or something to let the user know that they need to enter something.
Okay. See, maybe we'll end up with prompt. The user for each word. Here, let's maybe write it like this: for each word, prompt user for the word, and maybe display the type of word in the prompt. So if it's like an adjective, noun, or something like that. I'm going to need to store those words. Store in some kind of structure. And then take a look at the story. So I think with this one, there's a few different ways we could go about inserting it in. You could potentially have a list of kind of story bits that are already arranged so that it starts and then maybe it's a list. So your first element is the beginning of the story to the beginning of the first word that needs to be inserted, and then you go to the list of words that we got from the user, insert that in, then move on to the next piece. And just kind of go back and forth between those two words, almost like a kind of bouncing back and forth between them until you get a string to output. Some other ways you might approach this to merge the two sets of words is you might have I guess if you're using JavaScript or something, you might have a template that's written up, and you just insert the variables rather than storing the words in a list. You could store it in a kind of named variable environment, or maybe numbered. So like prompt 1 gets inserted into your template here, prompt 2 gets inserted into your template here. Um, any other ideas of ways that you might merge the two sets of words together?
They have to have.
Where'd it go?
I'm sorry?
Did it freeze too?
Some sort of merge is going to happen.
Whoa. Okay.
With responses.
I don't know if it's just me, but you were breaking up there, Derek.
Yeah, it kind of keeps going in and out.
Yeah.
I think he froze like right now. Like I see the voice thing jumping off again, but I know I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he doesn't have the same issue that I did. You could blame it on Hangouts.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm down with that. Last time I didn't even make it into the Hangout, so I'm totally down with blaming Hangouts for anything.
There you go. All right, so let's just say gonna use this merge or template or other method to combine words into the story. And then finally, we're going to display that out to the user. Cool. All right, well, I look forward to seeing what y'all come up with. Hopefully, we have lots of solutions to look for in lots of different languages. This time around, too, we have 2 weeks, so not just a single week, but we can come back in a week and take a look and see how everyone is doing with it, and if they have questions or problems or they just want to talk about it, we'll have that opportunity. Right. So, any questions about Mad Libs before we move on?
I don't think I have any right now. I probably will in a week, though. But I guess I just, sometimes I like to go all the way down the rabbit hole, and it's like, no, calm down. Take several steps back and start with one piece first. I'm like at the end already, like, wait, so how do I display it to you guys? And I haven't even built it, so I'm like, okay, back up. So I'll have some in about a week.
Sounds good. I do the same thing. I'll end up kind of chasing something, and sometimes it'll work out, and other times I'll be like, how did I end up here? All right, so I think that wraps it up for the Iron Coder projects and challenges. I do have something we can work on and try if we wanted to do a little live coding session, or it is Friday night, so if we wanted to go on to other things, that's fine too. I'll leave it up to you guys.
Sounds cool. If you want to do some live coder stuff, I'm okay. I don't know if he's back yet or not back. I don't know.
I'm up for live coding, assuming you can actually hear me now.
Okay.
I can hear you just fine. All right. So what I did is I went out to. Am I displaying my screen or not right now? I am not. Okay.
Not at the moment.
All right. So I went out to Project Euler, which is let me grab the link.
Euler.
I'm sorry, it's Euler. I always want to say Euler because it looks like it should be Euler, but then I hear people say Euler, and then I feel dumb.
He's German, and in German, the EU combination makes an oi sound.
Okay. And this is the early projects on there. And the project is even Fibonacci numbers. It's problem 2 on here, right after one that's very similar to Fizz Buzz. Bring it over. Entire screen. Any language preference?
None for me.
Okay. So the challenge here is to take a Fibonacci sequence, which is generated by adding the 2 previous items in a list. So you'll see, you're probably familiar with it, but basically you start out with 1 and 2, and then you add the 2 numbers, you come up with 3, then you add these 2 numbers, you come up with 5, you add these 2 numbers, come up with 8, etc. So take a Fibonacci sequence and consider the items in the list whose values are under 4 million and sum the even valued terms. So I think that with this, you're going to need to generate a Fibonacci sequence and then filter it so that you're only getting even items and then summing them up to get your final result. I think that's a good challenge to work on.
My one to that description is that I think if we tried to store all the Fibonacci numbers up to 4 million, we'd run out of memory.
It is quite possible, yes. We might need to use, like if we were in Python, we might need to use something like a enumerable. Maybe that's not the right term. I've had my head in C# this week.
Right. Are you looking for iterable?
Iterable, yeah. Basically, so you don't have to generate that full list. You just take the next item. You just need to know your last 2, and you could work through it so you wouldn't need to actually create a list. Or maybe you could even do your even filtering at the same time, because you only really need to keep track of 2 items, right? And the current one?
Yeah. 2 previous ones so that you can make the next one.
Yeah, and your sum, I guess, if you
Yep.
wanted to do that. So let's... I guess we could do it in Python, because Python's pretty easy to read, whether or not you are familiar with it. So, doing wrong here. Right, so give this a shot.
Did you pull that in by hand, or do you have something that generates that for you?
I had that already prepped. I cheated.
Yeah, right. But did you pull it in by hand?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I just copy-pasted it. So, do we want to start by having a list and then we can kind of push and pop values off of that list? Or we're going to need some kind of sum, right? So our total value is going to start out at 0. We'll say fib. So then maybe wow fib 0 plus fib 1. Is this going to work if we're manipulating this list as we kind of go through it? Less than 4. start out with a lower
so,
number.
but I'm not quite sure where you're going with this.
All right, let's just try this here. So I want to just create a list that's only going to have 2 items in it. But I guess we don't even really need a list, do we? We could just stick in variables for now to keep it easy. Lower equals 0. Upper equals 0. What version of Python am I in? I think I'm in 2. So what does this do? Basically what I'm doing here, so I set up some variables. We're not using this at this point. So while these 2 numbers are less than, for now, 400, because I don't want it to go crazy, we're going to set our current to the sum of upper and lower. Oh, we want this to start at 1. And this to start at 2. So current will be the sum of the previous 2 numbers. And then we set the lower to the upper. Basically, we're shifting. Set the lower to the upper and the upper to the current. And then we're going to print out the current, and then it's going to loop and do it again. So I think it should give us something like a Fibonacci, but we'll find out. Yeah?
Yeah, looks good.
Cool. Okay. So, probably first, because we're initializing these with values in them, we're going to want to say something like if so if current want to 0, so if it's even, total value equals total value plus current.
Oh, do.
Plus equals. That. Let's make this a smaller number so that our I don't have to do it now. So we should have 2, 8, which is 10, 44, 42. So we didn't get the 2 at the beginning. I guess we can just kind of cheat and say we already have it. I guess this turned out to be maybe a little easier than I thought it would be. I guess the hard part is knowing whether that's correct or not.
Well, that's what the website's for. you can submit it and see if it works.
Oh, okay. Let's try that. Where do I do that? Do I have to sign in?
Probably.
All right, we'll give that a shot. Ooh, fun. I get to enter some numbers. Okay, I'm not signing up. I'm sending in. So this one here. They really like their confirmation codes.
They had a lot of issues with spam at one point.
Oh, okay. So they just want to make all the forums friendly to... Sweet! I'm the 405,042nd person to solve that problem. All right, let's go ahead and... That one turned out to be easier than I thought it would be. Let's take a swing at the next one. Largest prime factor. Prime factors of 13195 are 5, 7, 13, 29. Ooh. I think I'm going to need some serious help with this one. So does anyone know what a prime factor is? Because I think those are numbers that...
I thought those are numbers multiplied by them. Is it by themselves? I don't remember. Honestly, I don't. I thought that's what it was, but I don't know.
It's something to do with multiplying.
A prime number is a number that's only divisible by 1 in itself.
Okay.
It was. Okay.
A prime factor of a number is a prime number that divides that number. 195, you can divide by 5 and you'll get in a whole number. I can't do that in my head.
All right, so if we took... And that if we take the 2639, so it's divisible by 5, and it's also a prime number. That would be a prime factor.
Yep.
Or it's divisible by that number. Okay. So how would you determine if something is a prime factor? How would you even determine if something is divisible? I guess you could use modulo. But
yep, you'd have to use modulo.
That would take a long time to go through every number from what, 2? I guess you'd start at? To...
Well, by inspection, you can rule out 2. That number's not even.
True. How high would you need to go? Would you only have to go halfway to that number? Because it can't be smaller than 2?
There are some tricks you can play in terms of such things. It's too late on a Friday night for me to remember all of them.
All right. Well, maybe this isn't a good problem to get into right now because I have no clue how to face this one. But if someone wants to tackle this one over the coming week, or maybe I will, I'd be happy to see a solution on this.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay, cool. Well, in that case, does anyone have anything they wanted to discuss real quick before we wrap this up?
I don't.
Okay. How about
Nope.
you, Derek? All right, awesome. Well, thank you both for joining, and thanks.
Nope, I'm good.
Cool. Thank you both for joining, and thanks to everyone who submitted a solution to the first project, and I'm looking forward to seeing the next ones. Have a great weekend, and I will see you all next week.
All right, there
All right.
next week.
Thanks.
All right, bye.
Bye.